Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to today's Academic Advisor Forum, the Counseling Center. We are going to spotlight for this forum today overview of services for students and other campus supports. My name is Ross Hawkins. I am the director of the Academic Advising and Transfer Center. If you wish to receive Master Advisor credit for today's session, please enter your name and your department in the chat feature. As a reminder, this advisor forum will be recorded and posted on the Mo State Advising YouTube channel. So if you know of others in your area who could benefit from today's information, please feel free to share that it will be posted on the YouTube channel within the next 1 to 2 weeks. I did want to also mention that our final advisor forum for the fall semester will be this Thursday in PSU 313. So it is a seated advisor forum, and the advisor forum is going to be on uh, connection through creativity, harnessing the power of expression. And so, an early thanks to Christina Bowles from the Center for Academic Success and Transition, who will be presenting on that topic. Again, it will be a seated advisor forum. I also want to mention that if you have ideas for topics for advisor forums in the spring 2026 semester, there are two ways that you can provide those suggestions. One, feel free to send me an email directly. Two, you can go to the Academic Advising and Transfer Center webpage and visit our Academic Advisor form page, and there's a form online that you can complete as well. Again, I always welcome ideas for topics. It's important that we hear from you all on what you want to learn about in the spring 2026 semester. Again, welcome everyone. I will now turn the forum over to Alicia Baum and Tammy Dixon, the director and associate director at the Counseling Center. Alicia and Tammy.
Good morning. Um, Tammy, do you want to say anything now or do you want to talk later? It's up to you. You're just going to start it? Okay. All right. Well, as Ross said, I'm Dr. Alicia Baum. I'm the clinic director, and Tammy's the assistant director. And we're going to just kind of go through our services with you today. And Tammy's going to talk a little bit about trauma later, kind of in our presentation. But if you have questions along the way and you want to stop us, I would love for this to be kind of informal and make sure that you leave here with information maybe you didn't have before or questions answered that you have. We find a lot of times that people have misinformation about the counseling center and its services and what we can provide. And so any opportunity that we have to clarify those things or to answer questions is a chance for us to get better information out there. So please stop us as we go, or if you have questions afterwards, feel free to reach out as well. Yeah, so we'll just get started. Tammy's going to be forwarding it. And I'm going to talk, so this may be a little off. Sorry. Okay, so our counseling center staff, our team is really big right now. It's actually pretty exciting. We are fully staffed in terms of our clinical staff, which means we have 10 mental health clinicians from various backgrounds providing services here in the center, including both Tammy and I. And so that's what you'll see here on your screen on the right-hand side. Interestingly enough, we have almost all of the mental health disciplines you can imagine covered just within our senior staff. So I'm a licensed psychologist. You can see we have multiple licensed professional counselors. We have a licensed marriage and family therapist. We have a licensed clinical social worker. So we're really represented in terms of our training and background. And it's a pretty diverse group of people and professionals for such a small number, which I like to brag about a little bit because I think they're a pretty stellar group of people. Something that's different and kind of unique for us this year is that we've had traditionally four graduate assistants for a number of years here in the center that are doing their training from their different programs here. And so they do provide clinical services as well to students on campus, but mostly for students who may be entering at a kind of a lower level need, depending on the training level of the trainees. But we have gone from having four trainees, MGAs, to actually having eight, which has been awesome this year. It's allowed us to actually really expand our services in terms of how many students that we can serve. And it also gives us this really rich training environment for students who are training here on campus in the School of Mental Health to get their internship or practicum experience with us. And because our center serves such a wide variety of needs, they really do get a lot of exposure to different things. And so we really feel like that we're kind of growing students in both ways, both internally with our trainees who are training to be the future of mental health, really, as well as with the students who come into our center. So yeah, as you can see here, we have representation from the three different areas in the School of Mental Health. We have counseling students, social work, as well as psychology students that are serving other students here in our center. They also do a lot of our outreach and help do tabling events on campus. They do presentations on campus, and really they do a good job, I think, of helping engage students when we're out and about doing different things. And so we've loved having them, and we'll have had this set of 8 this entire school year. So pretty exciting stuff. One of the things that we did add last year was case management services. So you'll see on here we have this part-time clinical staff with Richie Cordell is our lead case manager, but our other social work student also provides a lot of case management pieces here, and that has allowed us to also kind of expand services, which I'll get into a little bit more here in a minute. So that's our staff. We like to throw this little slide in here because I think people a lot of times don't know, first of all, where we are physically located, but also where they can find us and where we're providing services. So we are in the 3rd floor of Majors. Most people don't know, though, that we are not directly connected to Majors. So a lot of times I'll hear people say, oh, well, you can refer them to Majors and they can get counseling there, or Majors has counseling for students. And I always like to clarify that Majors is a building. So Majors Health and Wellness Center is a building. We are located in the building. We are in the 3rd floor. Majors does have their own behavioral health or mental health providers, but those people are primarily seeing staff and faculty and their families. So that's really what their services are for, and they are on a billing model. So they will bill for their services, whereas students have access to our services for free. It's part of their student fees, and we don't bill anything, and it doesn't ever cost them anything for anything that they access through the counseling center. We do work with Majors. They do have a psychiatric nurse practitioner and a couple of providers that feel really confident working with like psychotropic medications. So we do a lot of partnering with Majors in terms of referring clients to them or students to them and them referring back to us. But we are a completely separate entity from them in terms of our clinical practice. So that also means that all of our treatment notes and all of our documentation is completely separate, not only from Majors medical records, but also from this university's records. And it's one of those things we try to highlight with students who may not understand or know their rights or their privacy when it comes to their medical records, because we do fall under HIPAA, similar to the providers downstairs at Majors. So yes, we're on the 3rd floor of Majors, but we're just kind of like renting space here, if you will. Where else are we on campus? We're kind of everywhere. We've really tried to double down on our outreach efforts the past few years because we feel like the more we're seen on campus, the more people will remember to reach out when they need something. If we're just there when there's an event that's a big event, or we're doing responsive services, or we're just holed up here all the time just doing therapy all day long, then people don't know what's going on or what we're even about. So we've really tried to connect with a lot of different departments on campus to provide different services that might meet their needs in a different way. And so, for example, as opposed to having a number of different groups and workshops, although we do some of that still that are low attended, instead we're reaching out to departments or reaching out to different faculty members on campus and saying, hey, do you have a group of students already, or maybe it's a group of faculty members already who would benefit from a specific training or series of trainings? We can devise this for you and bring it to you. And we have found that to be really beneficial in terms of connecting real life needs on campus to what we can offer them. It helps for us to both be willing to wait for people to come to us, but also to be out and about there. We really, I think, this year beefed up our partnerships with athletics. So we've showed up at a lot of different athletic events. So the bottom of this screen, this is a football game this year where we tabled during a tailgate, and then also did a mental health awareness for November in the first half of the game, and we're able to interact with students. You can see a lot of our student workers were here with us that night. We're estimating that we probably spoke to over 200 students just at that event alone. So trying to get them to interact, doing fun things or things that they find meaningful really helps them to see what we're all about, and it helps us to feel more connected to campus. So we have been more involved with different events, as you can see, kind of silly fun things here too. It's how we take care of ourselves so we can take care of students. Okay. Um, So we do a personalized care model, which is step care plan here in the center, and they started that a few years ago, actually before I came on board. This is my third school year here, but we feel like we're finally kind of getting a groove with this, and we have changed it and adjusted it along the way to make sure that it's meeting the needs of students. And really trying to help facilitate accessibility to the center. We found that for several semesters, we would get backlogged in wait lists for students, higher demand of need than we could provide for students. So we continually go back to our stepped care plan and look at what we can beef up or change to make sure that students can access different levels of services regardless of availability to get in for individual therapy. And as we've done that, that's allowed us to actually serve more students. Um, so when you look at this step care, it would suggest that the higher up you go on the scale, the more intense the needs are at the time. But you may have students that have a variety of different needs. One of the things that we really try to push is students engaging in our self-help resources even before they ever come to the center, or if they never come to the center. Tammy will talk about that again here in a little bit, but they have access to self-help resources such as WellTrack and Togetherall as soon as they get a Missouri State email. So from the time they're accepted at the university, they have access to those resources. And both of them we have training up here where we're really trying to engage our staff more into explaining how to utilize those services. But this is a really great resource for you all to keep as you work with students and meet with students. Maybe they're having some struggles, or maybe you just think they need a little bit of support, making sure checking in with them and, hey, have you signed up for these? These are free to you, and really helping them to become good advocates for their own health and their own mental wellness is a really important step. A lot of times students come in and they don't really need to be in every other week therapy. They don't need to be in consistent counseling. They just need a little bit of guidance and to kind of get started on stuff. And so if we can do a good job of triaging through the process, then we get students matched with the right level of resources that they need and kind of keep an eye on them and keep them connected to things. So that's one of the kind of big goals of having the stepped care model. On the left-hand side, I know this is kind of small, but happy to share this with any of you if you all want it. You can see the different things that we do at the different levels. So in terms of actually coming into the center and starting care, we do like a screening, as I said, screening triage appointment, which we'll get into a little bit more here in a second. But regardless of whether they do that, they can always engage in that informational, interactional self-help. They can do peer support. For example, we have mental health ambassadors that are part of our team that are just students across campus that have volunteered to become trained peer mentors. And they do like drop-in hours, and they also assist and support some of our outreach efforts. We do skill building workshops, which I've talked about that a little bit here. We do group therapy and support groups. One of the things we did this semester that was new and unique is we have a Minecraft connection group that's happening over in the I don't know, video game lab. I don't think that's what it's actually called at the PSU. But that's where our students that were signed up for that can go and meet other students, and they work collaboratively together in the Minecraft world to build things together and to actually work through some social skill stuff. And that has been a kind of a cool, different thing that we've added this semester. We have a couple events coming up where we've partnered with Village Meeple here in the community, who are bringing a whole bunch of different games, like board games, to campus to try to get students to show up and interact and connect. The research suggests that one of the number one issues with students on college campuses that they face is loneliness and isolation. So we're trying to give them opportunities to connect with one another. Individual therapy doesn't help you connect with other people. So it can be a partner for therapy and support therapy, or it might be all that the student needs to really get connected and get engaged on campus, which helps with retention and it helps with success in school. So we know that those connection pieces are so important. Um, Let's see. So individual therapy and specialized therapy. So one of the specialized therapies that we offer here is we do have several providers in our center who are trained in EMDR, which is a trauma focused treatment, very specialized. That actually is a really expensive treatment to seek out in the community, but we can offer that right here with no additional charge to students who are appropriate for that service within our center. We also have couples therapy if the students are both enrolled here on campus. Students have to be enrolled in at least one credit hour to qualify for services at the counseling center. Um, and we can see them through the summer too. It's just something else that not a lot of people know. And then the other thing we do offer is we have 24/7 crisis services. So we have walk-in availability. We call it coverage time, where we have a senior staff every day that's available between the hours of 8 and 5, which are our business hours, to see unplanned visits, people who walk in who don't already have an appointment, who might need to be seen today. And if not today, then we try to get them in sooner if they're not like in an immediate crisis. But outside of our business hours, we pay for a service called Protocol, and it's available to students. Actually, it's available to anybody 24/7. You can just dial the phone number here for the counseling center and hit 0. And so a lot of times Res Life will use that. They'll call after hours for students that they're concerned about. We have staff and faculty that'll call that line about students that they're concerned about. So it actually, Protocol can be a good resource for just about anybody outside of business hours for sure. Let's see if there's anything else in here I did not cover. Okay, looks like it. I think that's it for that screen, that one. Okay. So this kind of will walk you through a little bit in terms of what how we see those steps for students who might want to engage in their own mental health and kind of what they can be doing. So I mentioned several of these things, but when they're grouped this way, it helps people make a little bit better sense of it, I think. So guided self-help, that's where that Well Track and Together All come in that I mentioned. But also we have a relaxation station here in the counseling center. It has a massage chair and it has there's a light lamp in there for like seasonal affective disorder or seasonal affective symptoms. There are all kinds of sensory things in there. So students can actually use the relaxation station regardless of whether they've ever been to our center for therapy or or established in care here. They can go online and reserve a spot, or they can just stop in and say, hey, is it open? They have to do a brief like training in how to use the space and they sign off on that. And then they are able to use that during our business hours. It's a really, really great area and probably underutilized for what it is. And we did a lot of upgrades to it last year with a grant. So it's a really great resource for students. If you have a student who's elevated or you just have somebody that you think could benefit from having a spot on campus just to kind of regroup and do whatever, you should send them our way because the relaxation station is a great resource. Another level that students can access without ever being a individual client here are the groups and workshops. So this is just a few of the ones that we offer on campus. The You Can Help a Friend is what the UCHAF. There's also You Can Help a Student. Those are both little training programs that you can engage in to get more information, or you can refer students to if they want to learn how to take care of each other and kind of notice that if there's warning signs or concerns where they might need to get more help for somebody that they know here on campus. Case management, as I mentioned earlier, something that we added last year. This role or the care coordinator role plays multiple parts for us. On one hand, they are doing the majority of our initial consultations, which is kind of the step in the door to getting into services here. So those it's a 20-minute screening appointment. They get basic information. They find out what's going on with the student, and they talk to them about all of these different resources that we have to offer and or community resources that might be beneficial to them. And then if it's still appropriate for them to be referred for therapy, then that's part of that initial meeting where they'll get a referral. But though that touch point, having just a couple people really be super good at that initial triage appointment has really helped us to kind of flow students into the center at a better rate. We have been able to have no wait list for I think we're on our 5th semester now of no wait list, and so that's 4th semester. That's pretty exciting, and I do think that a big part of that is this position and kind of this part in our step care. The other piece of it is case management, and so maybe somebody comes in and they want a touch point here, but they don't necessarily need to be therapy. Maybe they have therapy back home, or maybe they don't feel like they need to be seen on a regular basis. Well, a case manager can just touch base with them like every few weeks or once every 3 weeks or whatever they decide they need, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max, usually, where it's just like, how are we doing? Were you able to connect to this resource on campus? Did you go see your student advisors or some way I can connect you? Did you follow up with your appointment at majors? They really kind of try to help facilitate those pieces for students who might be feeling a little overwhelmed. And then through that case management process, is if it looks like they need a higher level of care, then they can refer them more directly in for a therapist to start counseling. So, um, and then on this last one here is counseling and therapy, which is probably what most of you traditionally would assume we're providing here at our center, which is individual, group, and specialized therapy. We do see students mostly on an every other week basis. So if you've heard this magic number of 8 sessions per semester, we really have worked hard the last year and a half or so to try to fade that lingo from campus because that was kind of pre-prescribing the number of sessions a person would need or receive, regardless of what they were showing up here for. And it's pretty unreasonable to do that. So instead, we've really tried to move towards this idea that most students, if we are not able to see you on an every other week basis, that your level of care, your level of need might be beyond what we can provide here. And so we can refer that out and get connected to the community if needed. But for the most part, we are seeing students here. That very rarely happens that we need to refer them out of here. So each clinician sets up that personalized care plan with their client when they start, and they work through that with them. And we try to see them, like I said, every other week. So that's where 8 came from. If you start the first week of the semester and you come every other week for the semester, that's 8 sessions. But if you start in the 6th week of the semester, you don't get 8 sessions. That's not how it works. So no 8. Each person gets personalized care depending on what they need, and then them and their provider work on that together. So services do start over every semester, and so I think it's important to make sure that students know that if they're established in care first semester and they want to return second semester, they have to call back and do that. We don't go solicit them to come back to the counseling center. We need them to reach out to their provider, and we tell them that. We talk to them about that. But also for students who maybe didn't come, maybe they couldn't get an appointment that worked with their time. They couldn't get in here as quick as they wanted to get in here. Everything starts fresh and clean at the beginning of the semester and then again in the summer. And so they have just as much chance as getting in here at their preferred time as anybody else if they want to call at the beginning of the semester. We do start taking calls from students or emails requests the week before classes start, and then we start providing services again the first week of classes. And that's true each semester in the summer as well. The only caveat to summer is that in order for us to provide services to a student in the summer, they have to be in the state of Missouri, and that's because of licensing requirements. We can see them virtually, but they have to be in the state of Missouri for that to work for us. And also they have to have either be enrolled in summer or have been enrolled in the spring and for the coming up fall, and then they would qualify for services in the summer. Yeah, I think that's it for that one. Um, so I talked a little bit about WellTrack and Togetherall. These are just some of the things that they have available to them when they sign up for these two. Togetherall is a little easier to describe, so I'll say that one first. That's peer-to-peer mental health, so it's a kind of a message board. It's anonymous. They can go on the message board and talk about concerns or issues that they're having, and talk to other college students from all over the world, actually, who might be having some of the same issues or concerns that they're having. It is anonymous, as I said, but Togetherall is monitored by licensed providers. So if they see anything alarming, if somebody says something that's connected to Missouri State alarming on those message boards, Tammy or I actually get notification of that. And then we can do a little bit of research and usually figure out who that student is and do follow-up if we need to. We could also do follow-up from protocol. I didn't mention that earlier, but if a student or a faculty staff member calls protocol after hours, we get all of those call logs, and it can be requested that we follow up if they would like us to do that, which we do every day. WellTrack is more of like a kind of a menu of different services that the students can engage in, and they can actually connect their WellTrack to their therapy if they want to, but they don't have to. Most students that are using WellTrack are just doing it on their own. They can do mood tracking. There's a Zen room for relaxation. I used it with a student the other day. I was talking to her about relaxation and like guided imagery. And I was like, I can teach you how to do this here, but you can actually just go into WellTrack. And we pulled it up, and she is able to learn how to do that for herself and utilize it outside of session. So lots of different ways that they can engage in the information that's in WellTrack. And we're really trying to kind of push that students utilize this as much as possible. possible because there's so many great resources. It's also something really good if you, like Dean of Students Office, which we partner with them a lot. We've worked with their staff, their case managers on if you have a student who's elevated in your office, what could you pull up from WellTrack to help them regulate? So it can be a really good tool for faculty and staff to use as well if you get to familiar with the different resources that it includes. Um, these are just I've said privacy because it says privacy on here, two scan codes that will take you directly to our links from Missouri State University for WellTrack and TogetherAll. You can also find those on our website. And so if you want to connect through our flow code, you can actually get all of our resources in one place. Okay, so before I get into this initial consultation a little bit further, I just want to make sure nobody has any questions because I've just been droning on and on this Monday afternoon.
So far, there are none in the chat, but
Okay.
attendees, as Alicia mentioned, please feel free to enter questions in the chat feature or just unmute.
Okay, perfect. I'll keep an eye on the chat too. Thanks. Um, So as I mentioned earlier, everyone who comes into our center who wants to enter services all comes through the same process. Occasionally we have somebody that comes in through crisis, which I can talk about that in just a second, but typically students come in through an initial consultation and they can schedule this online. It's the only appointment type besides the relaxation station that students can actually go online, check availability, and choose a slot for themselves. Everything else they have to call up here and or email. Calling is preferred or stop in. But they can schedule initial consultations online. I will tell you that we schedule them out only 3 weeks at a time. So if they go online and you have a student come in and say, well, I checked the counseling center and they can't get me and they have no availability. Well, it may be that there isn't anything that worked for their when they're available for that 3 week time span. But if they'll call up here, a lot of times we can move things around and adjust things to accommodate students. And we do that a lot. Tammy and I are both administrators, but we also both carry client loads. And so we do tend to have a little bit more flexibility. So sometimes we'll take on those students that maybe we can't get them quite squeezed in where we have slots open, or we'll have another clinician that's willing to like move things around to accommodate. So if you have a student that tried to schedule online and it won't work for them, always have them call up here or stop by and see if there's something that we can do to get them in here because chances are we can. It's been very rare that that hasn't been something that we can figure out for them. So that 30-minute consultation meeting, I talked about that already a little bit, so I won't go into detail. It's really about getting more information and kind of setting them up with a care plan and figuring out which direction to send them with terms of resources. So they'll do that with that person and then schedule up a follow-up appointment. They may be in multiple services at once, like they may be referred for a group therapy or a workshop, but they also maybe start individual therapy as well. So this looks different for each student that comes in. But the constant is initial consultation. Even right now here at the end of semester where we have moved to what we call an extended consult model, which means we're trying to get more students in who maybe are new and are trying to establish care with us. They still go through this initial consultation because it helps us to filter where they need to go and to most appropriately meet their needs. So the only time students really have services that when they come in and they miss this part is if they've walked in crisis. And when we have a student who walks in for an unplanned visit, which just means they don't have an appointment, they do a self-rating scale, which helps us to determine what are we dealing with, like what's happening here. So we have like a 3-level system, whereas level 1 is, I'm struggling, I'm not in immediate danger, I haven't had a traumatic event happen, but I feel like I want to get established with services. That has 1 level of response. Level 2 has a little bit more. Maybe they've had, maybe they're not sleeping well. Maybe something has happened. Maybe there's an issue, but we're still not like in this like maybe kind of emergent situation. That is going to be a quick 10-15 minute touch base with one of our staff and then try to figure out when the quickest is we can get them in. And then our level 3 is definitely what we consider more of a true crisis. So that's imminent risk of harm to self or others. I've had maybe a major loss in the last few hours, or I've seen some sort of traumatic event. So they self-rate, and then based on their self-rating, our staff has a different level of response to them. And we try to, again, get them kind of pipelined to the right direction. So if somebody comes in through crisis, We usually see them once for crisis, and depending on what's going on, we'll do like a follow-up requirement with them. And then they will go back through our system and we'll get them connected. So sometimes they miss this IC, this initial consultation, simply because they came in crisis. Or we've met them in response, we'll get the student's office will call, or we'll have a faculty member call and say, I have this student in crisis. Here's what's going on. Can I walk them over? We're like, absolutely, please walk them over. We always welcome that, and we'll always have somebody that will be able to see them in those crisis moments. We actually do a lot of responsive crisis work as well. If we have like a death on campus that maybe impacts a whole organization or a large group of students, or even a group of faculty and staff, which we did some support with faculty and staff in the fall when we had a faculty or a staff loss. So we do a lot of responsive services that I would consider crisis work as well, in addition to just the daily work that we're doing here in the center. Okay, Tammy. So primarily in terms of therapy, we do solution-focused brief therapy. I will say that each counselor up here, each provider up here can provide services the way they see best fit for their students that they're working with. So we do solution focused simply because we have a limited amount of time we can see students. But you will see a variety of different modalities kind of intertwined in the services that we provide here. Some of these things I've already mentioned. Students have to be enrolled in 1 credit hour, virtual or in person. We can provide either. Let's see, I talked about that. Most students attend 3 to 5 sessions. That is the average. And that's just because that's usually when I don't know, they stop coming, or we feel like they've met their goals or whatever. We do start over each semester. Let's see. Yeah, I think that I've already covered all of this. So we can go past through that.
One thing I will add with the virtual services, that's been really helpful for our students that are in education and doing their student teaching, or maybe the healthcare majors who are doing their clinicals. That's always been a little bit helpful for those individuals to continue to see services if they're still in the state of Missouri. So,
Yep. Thanks for adding that. I think I kind of talked about this already too. Basically, we have walk-in appointments. Yep, I said all this. Let's see. Non-violent, non-crisis students. Sorry, I'm just looking over this. I tend to get ahead of myself in these presentations. We do encourage that students use 988 too, if that works better for them. That's another obviously crisis line that you can call. You don't have to be in crisis to call for those services. They're support services, just like protocol. We don't get feedback from 988, so if they want us to follow up, they have to go through protocol. But both of those are good resources for you to have on hand if you meet with students regularly, so you have something to give them. We do have actually faculty and staff that call up here during the week, actually pretty often. Checking in, maybe they met with the student, maybe the student's behavior seemed off in class, maybe there's a pattern of things that they've noticed in class, and we can definitely be a good resource for faculty and staff in that way, and we do an advisement, try to get you some connections. But also I always want to make sure that people understand that the Dean of Students Office and the BIT Behavior Intervention Team are also really great resources if you have a student that you're concerned about, because that ties them into a case manager who also we'll refer them here to the counseling center. We're really active with the Dean of Students Office. So number of ways that you can get a student connected with us. But I think it's important to know all those different options.
one other thing I would add is one of the hesitations that students have with calling protocol or 988 is sometimes they think it's only for crises, but they both are warm lines as well. So if a student's having a panic attack, protocol will help walk them through that. It's not just, hey, you need to go to the hospital, which is what they are fearful of, is that someone will send them to the hospital just within the 5 minutes of a phone call. And that's not true. So that's one myth that if you'll help us dispel when they're talking about those lines, that would be great.
It's actually pretty rare for a protocol or anybody even up here in our center to call the hospital or to insist on somebody being transported to the hospital. Does not happen a lot. And our staff has done some extra training this year with safety as well as dispatch, trying to make sure that we're all on the same page on campus here about what we do with a student who might have more emergent issues. But we've also been doing training in collaboration with Burl and some of their different offerings that they have when it comes to responsive services or crisis services. So I feel like we have some good partnerships and good practices in place that kind of protect students and give them choices in those situations. We always want to, even a student who might be elevated or struggling with something that's really serious, we always want to give them an opportunity to engage in their response and not take their autonomy away in that situation, which can actually be more traumatizing than helpful. So we truly work to collaborate with the student and the people in their world to take care of them and provide the best services they need in the moment without removing them from the decision making. So yeah, we don't do a lot of hospitalization without them being on board with that. So okay, I'm gonna stop talking and let Tammy take over a little bit and let her talk about trauma.
So we've been talking a lot in our office about trauma-informed care. And so I started thinking about this presentation. I thought it might be good just to touch base on this, and because that's usually when you're going to see a student who um, that you might want to make referrals for to other resources, but specifically to us as well. But trauma is has been a buzzword, but I'm giving you the true definition from the American Psychological Association. Any disturbing experience that results in significant fear, helplessness, dissociation, confusion, or other disruptive feelings intense enough to have long-lasting negative effect on a person's attitudes, behavior, and other aspects of functioning. So really, trauma impacts a student's whole worldview. And so it impacts a lot of their daily life. It impacts their academic abilities. And so it comes out usually when they're talking to trusted individuals such as yourselves. So it can be from childhood where they come to college and all of a sudden some of their childhood trauma is being triggered because they're away from their support system, or it could be something recent that they've experienced here on campus. Traumas are usually caused by human behavior, by nature, like tornadoes, earthquakes, just any type of natural event. But it does turn an individual's world upside down, making it feel very unpredictable. So some types of trauma that you might see in students if they report a loss of a loved one. We've seen grief increase over the past few years in our students, whether that be the loss of a loved one or grief for other things, because grief can touch a whole different or a whole lot of different categories. But we have seen a lot of students who are facing the loss of a loved one, a car accident of any kind, racial harassment, gender-based discrimination, natural disaster, bullying, sexual assaults, financial stress, individuals who are trying to figure out how are they going to pay for their next semester at school and they really want to be here. We also have students who are kind of dealing with the world news, or some of our international students are dealing with things that are happening back home that are beyond our comprehension here in the United States. And then health concerns of loved ones or their selves. That's often trauma that we see up here as well. There are a lot of other categories, but these are kind of a good idea of some of the types that you might see in your office. And usually when this gets presented, a student might become pretty emotional. When someone's experienced trauma, it impacts their frontal lobe of their brain. And so they may not be able to make decisions well. So asking them which class they want to take next spring might actually create a student breaking down with you not fully understanding why that may have happened. So it could be something that looks like that. But there are a lot of different models for trauma-informed advising. I've seen so many acronyms in the past few days looking at this information. So there's a lot out there, but all of them do kind of hold all of the following uh, requirements or following characteristics. There we go. Creating a safe space, making sure that students know that they can be comfortable and open in your office. That's by developing the relationship with the student or showing interest in them individually, not just about their academic work. We want to use empathy, just making sure that we can listen to their story, hear their story, maybe not so much sympathizing with it, but just kind of feeling their feelings and seeing where they're coming from. We want to use cultural competence, whether that be in our referrals, because a lot of our students from diverse background may not want to come to the counseling center. Counseling may not be a thing for them or their families, but they may go see a doctor, maybe at Majors Health and Wellness Center, or they may talk to a spiritual leader. So it kind of depends on their background. So using that cultural competence that we've all developed through our educations can be very helpful in advising. We always want to ask what they need, because a lot of times what they are needing in that moment, we may not be able to figure out. So just asking, hey, what can I give you? What can I help you with? What do you need right now? Sometimes it's a tissue. Sometimes it's them saying, I just need my roommate to come help me and get me back to my room. So if you can call someone, probably don't want to get into calling family, but that's a whole nother set of issues. But if they have someone, like if they're needing some help getting back to their dorm, um, or maybe help it talking to a professor, those are kind of things that you can help with. If a student comes to a point to where they are unable to really engage in conversation on that level, use distraction. Just kind of pull away from whatever you were talking about that kind of triggered the moment. A lot of times in my office, I'll just start tapping my toes and have the student join me, just tapping toes back and forth. And then I'll just ask them questions about themselves, like what's their major? Where are they from? What are they hoping to do with their degree once they get their degree? Or, just asking what their favorite student organization on campus is. Just anything that would provide a distraction and get to know them a little bit better so that you can help them through this moment a little easier. Asking open-ended questions can always get you more information than just the yes no questions. So that's always part of trauma-informed advising, is just kind of gathering as much information as you can so that you can help them in the appropriate way. One thing that I always encourage, if you're an advisor, you're a helper by nature, most likely. So recognizing that we don't always have to have the full story to help someone. I don't need to know what happened to them that has caused this, but I want to help them in the moment. So whatever I need in the moment, I can ask those questions, but don't feel the need to ask them specific information about the trauma they've experienced. I just want to help them through this moment and get them to the next resource. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. We always want to allow a student more choice than not. So asking kind of what they're looking for. Like I said, sometimes they have difficulty making decisions or concentrating in the moment. So you can always put that in writing and send that with the student. That's helpful as well. If they're kind of in that mind state, they may not be thinking as clearly. So always giving them a choice in situations like, would you rather go to majors? Would you like to go to the counseling center? Those type of choices are helpful to a student. I would also let them know your boundaries. Some students, once they feel safe, really kind of latch onto that individual that's made them feel safe, because they may not have ever had that in their lifetime. So you want to be clear and consistent about your boundaries. Like, this is when I work, this is when I have time available for a drop-in. Also, you want to let them know because I believe all advisors, unless you're working in our office or in majors, are Title IX reporters. So you do want them to know that information so they don't feel blindsided when you say, I have to make that report. So knowing kind of what you can hear and not hear, what they want to share, and then knowing kind of your time commitments or time boundaries is a positive thing, and setting that consistency with the student. You want to be able to provide resources for a student. I put for client, sorry, that's our terminology, but you want to be able to provide resources for a student, whether that be us, whether that be Majors Health and Wellness Center, maybe the Disability Resource Center, Learning Diagnostic Clinic is a often used resource. You want to be able to know where to find that information and provide that to the student. Again, I usually would write that down or show them where to find it on the website so that they don't have to think through that too far when they leave. And then I think I've said this several times, but recognizing simple decisions do become difficult when someone's in that state of emotion. So they may not be able to make those simple decisions. So you may have to guide that a little bit by saying, you know what, it seems like this might be a little challenging right now. Let's just talk about options, and we can talk about this further in our next session. Or you could put it in writing and you can email with them back and forth later if another appointment isn't available. So those are just some ideas to kind of help you with the trauma-informed advising. Like I said, there are multiple models out there. I'm sure you could find lots more information out there, but I just wanted to share some of the components of most of them. So, all right. And that is all I had. I think we're kind of up to the point of if we have some questions, that might be a good place for that, given that we've got about 5 to 10 more minutes left.
I have a little question.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Baum. Hi, Tammy. You had mentioned sometimes a faculty or a staff member would make that immediate referral for someone to your services. I'm just curious. I had an opportunity over the years while I was at OTC to work on our behavioral intervention team. And I wonder, do you all have a regular kind of seat at the table in an advisory role with our behavioral intervention team at Missouri State?
Mhm. I do. I sit on the behavior intervention team, so I'm there every week for 2 hours, and then I'm also on. BIT also has a smaller team called the threat assessment team that is more imminent, like I kind of respond to more imminent things that are happening, and I'm also on that smaller team. And so I feel very fortunate to have a seat at that table that I actually think is really valued by the team that's there. BIT works really hard to manage students and student needs across campus. It's really pretty amazing to see what they do on a regular basis, and all the players at the table. So they really, I will tell you that if you have an opportunity to see the BIT's presentation on like with the referrals and their numbers that they have, I would encourage people to do that because the majority of the referrals that come to BIT are mental health. Um, Almost all of them have at least a mental health component to them. And so I work as a general advisor on that team. So I'm not talking about specific students or clients that are here. So I do want to clarify that in case anybody's wondering. It's really more of a, this is what's going on. And then my role usually is, well, here's what that might look like, or this could be what we're talking about here. If we do have a release for a specific student, then I will sometimes do that. One of the things that we try to do in our partnership with the Dean of Students Office is if we have a student, let's say that they're working through BIT, and they're concerned about whether or not they're actually following through on anything. We try to encourage the student to allow us to have a release that just says, "Yep, we have eyes on," and that's
Right.
it. And so we as a staff here in our center talk a lot about how do we talk about release of information and informed consent with students and why it might be beneficial for them to allow us to give them that information, even if it's just a eyes on kind of thing, which is usually what we have consent for. So yeah, I do sit on that team, and I'm grateful that I get to be on that team because it's a lot of work, but it's work well worth it when it comes to supporting students on campus. So
I appreciate you sharing that. I kind of knew the answer, but I think it's really helpful for everyone to know that kind of important quiet work that's going on, indeed, behind the scenes. Thank you.
thank you for highlighting that.
So we have a couple questions in the chat. So one, more and more students are using AI for mental self-care. Do we have resources to address that?
Do you want to take that, Tammy? Do you want me to?
I'll take it. So I've been
Okay.
doing a lot of professional development in this area just because AI is moving so fast and we are hearing that our students are using it. So at this point, when I'm meeting with a student who's using AI for self-care, I will talk about the kind of the benefits and the challenges to AI for that reason, just to make sure that it's healthy and safe for them. Because there are some great things that AI can help with students. I have one student who's using it to reframe negative thoughts and it's working beautifully, but there are some dangers to it as well. So I just doing that education piece about the challenges and the benefits to it is kind of what we're doing. And we're going to be working and doing some training with our staff about AI as well, just because it's moving so fast and we're trying to wrap our minds around it as well. So,
Okay. Next question. Counseling can be a very vulnerable experience for many students, and I'd imagine cultural factors sometimes become a stumbling block. Over the years, I've had some international students complain about the level of cultural awareness of the provider they were assigned to. How much flexibility do students have to change their provider if they don't feel connected to their assigned provider?
I mean, we always want it to be a good match, and that should be true of any provider, counseling center, and the public. It doesn't matter. Like it has to be a good match, or therapy won't work. So, we do try to whoever they end up they start with, right? And that's usually sometimes it has to do with availability, other times it has to do with other factors, but sometimes it's just by chance that's who is available. But if a student wants to switch providers, we do have a process for that. They can say that directly to their provider. We do have a policy here of if we want you to be matched with the best person for you. They can also have reach out to me and I can help facilitate that, but they can definitely switch providers. What we don't allow is for students just to bebop constantly between providers because that's a whole different issue when it comes to counseling. And we want to be consistent with it and we want to hold students accountable for like that piece. But definitely from a cultural competence standpoint, we want the students that come here to feel like their provider can provide meaningful information to them and actually make counseling meaningful to them. So they can always ask to switch providers, and we can accommodate that.
And if someone is needing something that our center doesn't provide, we can also provide referrals out to the community. So we will help find them the right counselor if it's not within our staff. But usually within our staff of, how many did we say, 18, we can usually find someone that will match. So
Okay.
any other?
Those are the only questions I have in the chat so far. Does anyone else have any questions for Alicia or Tammy? Please feel free to come off mute if you want to ask a question.
Also know that you all are good informants for us. So like if you see trends out there or you hear information that you think doesn't seem quite right, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. Let us clarify that or let us say, yeah, that is true. We didn't know that was an issue. Like it helps us to know we're not out in the midst of it all the time. You all are on the front, you are the front line. Probably more so than a lot of other people on campus. So if there's something that we need to know or we can help with, we're always open to that. So feel free to reach out to us.
Okay. Well, Alicia and Tammy, on behalf of our attendees today at the Advisor Forum, thank you for your willingness to present on the services and support that you offer through the counseling system. Really, really helpful information, and we can all use it when we're working with our students. So appreciate the both of you. Appreciate attendees. Thanks for being here for this Advisor Forum. I hope to see many of you Thursday for our seated Advisor Forum in PSU 313. Happy Monday, everyone.